Have you ever felt like life around you is just too loud? Not just the sound of traffic, television, or people talking, but the constant noise of opinions, expectations, comparisons, and pressure that never seems to end? Jack, a young man full of potential, felt this noise every single day of his life. The moment he woke up, the first thing he reached for was his phone. Notifications popped up one after another, messages, emails, social media alerts, advertisements, and endless updates from people he barely even knew. Every post seemed to scream at him, look at their success, look at their happiness, look at what you're missing. And as the noise grew louder, Jack's heart grew heavier. He wasn't a failure. He wasn't lazy. But the world around him made him believe that he wasn't enough. Whenever he looked at someone achieving more than him, he felt smaller. Whenever people gave him unsolicited advice, he doubted his own path. It felt like the whole world was sitting in a stadium, shouting different directions at him, and he was standing in the middle, not knowing which way to run. His own voice, his dreams, his values, his true desires, was buried under the weight of the world's constant noise. Jack often thought, if only I could pause everything. If only I could turn the volume down on life for just one moment, maybe I'd finally understand what I really want. But instead of pausing, he kept running, chasing trends, chasing approval, chasing things that didn't bring him peace. He wore a smile on his face, but inside, he was exhausted. Every day felt like a competition, and he was tired of competing. And isn't that the reality for many of us? We live in a world that never stops talking. Society tells us what success should look like. Social media tells us how our lives should appear. Friends, family, and even strangers tell us what choices we should make. And slowly, without realizing it, we lose ourselves. We stop asking, what do I want, and start asking, what will make them happy? Jack's story begins here, in this storm of noise, confusion, and pressure. He was not a bad person, he was simply human, caught in the same trap that many of us fall into. But deep inside, something was breaking. He felt restless, unsettled, and drained. He realized that if he didn't find a way to silence the noise around him, he would never discover the life he was meant to live. What Jack didn't know yet was that one small choice could change everything. One evening, Jack sat in his room staring at the glowing screen of his phone. He had been scrolling for hours, moving from one social media app to another, trapped in the endless loop of comparison. Every post seemed like a reminder of what he didn't have. A classmate had just bought a new car. An old friend was celebrating a promotion. Another acquaintance had uploaded pictures from a vacation in a beautiful place Jack had only dreamed of visiting. The more he scrolled, the heavier his heart felt. His chest tightened, and a thought echoed in his mind, why am I never enough? In that moment of quiet despair, his grandfather walked into the room. The old man noticed Jack's slouched posture and dull eyes and asked, why do you look so tired, son? Jack sighed and muttered, I don't know. I just feel like I'm always behind. No matter what I do, someone else is doing better. I can't keep up. His grandfather sat beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said something Jack would never forget, the problem isn't that you're behind, Jack. The problem is that you're listening to too many voices at once. You're lost, not because you lack direction, but because the world is too noisy. Say no to the world's noise, and you'll finally hear yourself. Those words hit Jack like a spark in the dark. He sat up straighter, puzzled yet curious. His grandfather continued, when I was your age, the noise was different. It came from neighbors, relatives, and people in the town. Everyone had an opinion about what I should do. But I learned that if I tried to please them all, I'd never live my own life. Jack, peace begins when you stop letting others control the volume in your mind. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. His grandfather's words replayed in his head over and over. He realized that for years he had been running a race he never signed up for. He was chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing an image of success that wasn't his own. And the truth was painful: in trying to be everything the world wanted, he had forgotten who he truly was. As the clock ticked past midnight, Jack made a silent decision. He would stop allowing the noise to drown him. He didn't know how, but he knew it had to start somewhere. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, I begin again. Tomorrow, I choose silence over noise." And with that, a small flame of hope was lit inside him. The next morning, Jack decided to try something different. For the first time in years, he resisted the urge to pick up his phone the moment he woke up. Instead, he sat on his bed in silence. At first, it felt strange. His fingers twitched, almost desperate to reach for the device that had controlled so much of his life. His mind buzzed with curiosity: what if he missed something important? What if people noticed he hadn't replied? What if the world moved on without him? But then he remembered his grandfather's words: "Say no to the world's noise, and you'll finally hear yourself." So, Jack closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The room was quiet, almost too quiet. At first, his thoughts raced wildly, like a storm refusing to calm down. Memories of mistakes, worries about the future, doubts about himself, all of it came rushing in. But after a few minutes, something shifted. Beneath the chaos, he began to notice something he hadn't felt in years: his own voice. It was faint, fragile, and almost unfamiliar, but it was there. A whisper telling him that he didn't need to run someone else's race. A whisper reminding him of the dreams he had buried long ago. Encouraged, Jack turned his experiment into a habit. Each morning, he would set aside his phone, sit quietly, and listen to himself. Sometimes it was only for 10 minutes, sometimes longer. The silence was uncomfortable at first, but slowly it became his safe space. He discovered that he had passions he had ignored, ideas he had silenced, and strengths he had underestimated. He realized the world's noise had made him forget how powerful he truly was. To strengthen his practice, Jack began writing down his thoughts in a notebook. Every page became a mirror, reflecting who he really was without filters, without comparison, without judgment. The more he wrote, the clearer he became. His life wasn't supposed to be a copy of someone else's highlight reel. It was supposed to be his own story, raw and unique. Of course, the world didn't suddenly go quiet. Notifications still came. People still shared opinions. But Jack had discovered a secret: he could choose which voices to let in. He could decide when to listen and when to simply walk away. The silence he practiced each day became a shield, protecting him from the constant chatter of the world. For the first time in years, Jack felt peace, not because the noise had stopped, but because he had learned to stop obeying it. Weeks passed, and Jack's experiment with silence grew into something deeper. The boy who once drowned in the world's noise was beginning to rise with a new strength. His friends noticed the change first. Jack was no longer glued to his phone, endlessly scrolling and comparing. He laughed more, he listened better, and he seemed calmer in moments that once made him anxious. People would ask him, "Why do you seem so different lately?" And Jack would smile and say, "I've just stopped letting the noise decide how I feel." One afternoon, while sitting in a cafe with his friends, someone mocked him for not keeping up with the latest trends online. Before, Jack would have felt embarrassed, maybe even insecure. But now, he simply shrugged and said, "Not every voice deserves my attention." His word surprised everyone at the table, including himself. He realized he was finally taking control, not of the world, but of his reaction to it. With this newfound clarity, Jack started giving more time to the things that truly mattered to him. He rediscovered his love for writing, something he had abandoned years ago because people told him it wasn't practical. He began journaling daily, then moved on to short essays, and eventually started sharing his thoughts online, not to seek approval, but to inspire. To his surprise, people responded with gratitude. His words about peace, focus, and inner strength touched lives. Ironically, the same world that once silenced him was now listening to his authentic voice. The more Jack shared, the stronger he felt. Criticism no longer shook him, praise no longer defined him. Both were just sounds, noise that came and went. What mattered was that he was living in alignment with his truth. His confidence wasn't built on applause but on authenticity. He finally understood, when you stop dancing to the noise, you create your own music. Jack's transformation wasn't about becoming perfect. He still had fears, doubts, and challenges. But the difference was clear: he wasn't living as a prisoner of the world's opinions anymore. He was living as a free man, guided by his own voice. And that freedom was far more valuable than any approval the world could offer. His story was no longer about a boy lost in noise, it was about a man who discovered the power of silence. Jack's journey teaches us something many people forget in today's world. Life will never be quiet on its own. The world will always shout at us, through social media, through advertisements, through critics, and even through well-meaning friends and family who believe they know what's best. If we wait for the noise to stop, we will wait forever. The real power lies not in silencing the world but in learning to turn down its volume inside our own minds. Think about it: how many times have you felt overwhelmed by what others expect from you? How often have you compared your journey to someone else's highlight reel? How many dreams have you abandoned just because someone told you they weren't good enough? That is the world's noise at work, loud, persuasive, and relentless. And yet, like Jack, we have a choice. We can step back, we can pause, and we can listen to our own inner voice. The truth is, the world's noise is nothing more than distraction. It tells you that you are behind when you are actually on your own timeline. It tells you that you must copy others when in reality you were born to be unique. It tells you that you are not enough, when in fact you already carry within you everything you need to build a meaningful life. The moment you recognize this, the noise loses its power. Jack's story is not just his, it is a mirror for us all. When he said no to the noise, he discovered peace, clarity, and strength. Imagine what could happen if you did the same. What dreams could you revive? What passions could you pursue? What version of yourself could finally emerge if you stopped trying to please the crowd and started honoring your own path? So here is the lesson: say no to the world's noise. Say no to the endless comparisons, the criticism, the fake standards of success. Instead, say yes to your own growth, yes to your own dreams, and yes to your inner peace. Because in the end, the people who change the world are not those who shouted the loudest but those who had the courage to listen to their own quiet voice and follow it fearlessly. Remember this always: your life is your story, and no amount of noise can drown out a voice that refuses to be silenced.